The question is, why do strength coaches even get their athletes to do weekly jump monitoring on force plates? What's the goal and what's the rationale behind it? Because we're not just testing to get numbers. We're using these jump metrics to get insight into the training effect on an athlete and the adaptations that are happening from the training that we're prescribing. But there's more to it than just looking at a couple of numbers. And the value of it is not just in the numbers from today, but the value is in how these numbers fit into the athlete's trends over time and what we would expect to see. The force plates themselves offer a quick, objective, and repeatable opportunity to assess both the strategy and outcome metrics or performance metrics of a jump. And we use jump testing at regular touch points to understand how training is impacting performance, not just in terms of output, but also in how that output is being performed. Instead of relying on one metric like jump height, we can look at a group of metrics, both strategy and outcome or performance-based, to get a fuller picture of how the athlete is performing. And the way that I like to look at my jump metrics and jump monitoring as a whole is outcome, strategy, and context. Outcome tells us what happened, strategy tells us how that happened, and the context tells us whether the response that we're seeing makes sense. For example, jump height might tell us the output of an athlete, but things like time to takeoff, countermovement depth, and RSI mod can tell us the strategy behind the output. And once we've collected data on an athlete for a few time points, we can start to understand what their normal looks like, both from a metric standpoint and from their actual force time tracing. And then we can identify when things start to shift. For example, maybe an athlete's jump height stays consistent, but it takes them longer to get off the ground. Or maybe their output is down, but it's been a hard training block and we understand that that's what we would expect. Well, the nice thing about having force plates is then we can look at our metrics and we can identify if the change is isolated to just one metric or whether multiple parts of their jump are shifting together. And then from there, we can ask whether this is a positive adaptation, expected fatigue, or something that we need to investigate further. Because really what we're trying to understand is if the athlete is becoming more powerful, more efficient, more fatigued, or if they're simply changing their jumping strategy in response to training. Now, one of the biggest nuances that comes with jump monitoring, and something that can trip up a lot of strength coaches or sports scientists early in their careers, is when our performance metrics start to decrease, but it's actually what we're expecting to see. So for instance, jump height might go down across a training block because it's super heavy, high eccentric load training, and that's gonna have a big fatiguing effect on the athlete. And as a response, their jump height might go down. And in that context, it might not be a problem. It's the expected fatigue response from the training. However, if that same pattern shows up when somebody is supposed to be fresh, then we might have to start asking some questions and doing a deeper dive into what's going on. So really, the reason behind doing jump monitoring is so that we can have an athlete come onto the force plates, do their jumps, and instead of asking, how high did they jump today, we can start asking ourselves, is this athlete responding to training the way that we would expect them to? And this is where jump monitoring actually becomes useful and powerful, because now our decisions that we're making about the athlete aren't just based on how the training should be affecting them, but instead they're based on how the athlete is actually responding to the training that you're giving them, with objective and verifiable metrics to back up your thought processes. So jump monitoring isn't about collecting data. It's about understanding the training effect and then using that to decide what to do next.